Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Yup. Welcome back. Happy Tuesday, Heat Seekers. We got a special one tonight. Sorry we were a little bit behind the times, but that's okay. It's worth the wait. I promise you. We've got a big one tonight. We've got Ian Hartitz, the man, the myth, the legend, Sully's spirit animal. I don't know. I don't have a clue what we want to call him, but he is. We're excited to have him. He's from PFF. You know him. You love him. He's got podcasts. He's got all sorts of fun stuff. Ian, welcome, brother. Happy to have you. Tell everybody where they can find all your stuff. Feel free to plug away, my man.
Thank you, guys. Excited to be here. Always down to talk ball with anyone that's as big of a, football degen as I am. It's May freaking 25th, and we could, I think we're only planning to talk for an hour, but I'm sure we could hit it off for like 5 or 6 if things really called for it. But yeah, the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I have basically, a Wednesday episode going with my co-host Andrew Erickson. We break down this or that. Friday episode where I'm hoping to interview the best and greatest out there. We got Deandre Swift last week, T. Higgins the week before, and just in case you don't have your fantasy fix from that, I got daily fantasy files going out about this and that. We got freaking 3 months before the season starts. I plan on breaking down everybody in depthly. So excited to be here, guys. And yeah, I know we're talking, mostly second year breakouts today, which I love. I was saying before the pre-show, so much the media attention in these off-season months ends up going to the rookies and the free agents. And I get it. We don't have much else to do. But in reality, some of these players that are already in the league are take the biggest leaps forward. So pumped to be here, guys.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Mr. Sullivan, what's happening? How are things up in the Great White North?
Pretty good, man. It stopped raining today. I was starting to round up pairs of animals and build a boat. It had been raining for so long. But thankfully, no need for that. Super pumped for today. Truth be told, I'm a pretty big fan, and I listen to the podcast all the time. The All 32 were awesome. The fantasy files, I enjoy them. So thank you for the content that you put out. And don't forget Ian's written stuff at PFF as well. This man writes like a madman. So super pumped to be here. Happy to be here. I agree. Second year guys, it's funny how we all go just batshit crazy for the rookies every year. And then they're kind of gone, right? Like we kind of forget about them and off we go, and they just become part of that pool of players available. So super happy to be here. Looking forward to having a nice chat for 5-6 hours, like Ian said.
Well, and back in the early days of Roto Heat, that, Rick and I know all too well. We would spend hours here on YouTube live streaming, talking to whoever showed up. So don't say that. It could possibly happen. We are degenerates. And I will say, I've taken my degenerateness to the next level because I have a PFF college subscription and I'm digging into BYU and Air Force and all these other crazy teams that nobody cares about reading about. But if you guys want to find our written content, obviously, rotoheat.com, we got lots of stuff going on over there. Sully and I are dropping stuff on the regular. Sully's got just posted his most recent 2 cents talking about the Julio Jones shenanigans that seem to be afoot. With that being said, Rob, what's going on in the news and notes? Let's talk about all that.
Well, let's talk about Julio Jones. So yes, I dropped a podcast today about the fantasy impact of a potential Julio Jones trade. So he's on the market. It sounds like the rumored asking price from Atlanta is a second rounder, which I don't think is outrageous. So my question, and I'll start with you, Ian, is does Julio get traded, number one? And if so, do you think the best landing spot for him would be fantasy-wise?
I've been sticking to my guns here. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. I think we're all being marks. I think we got a bunch of people wanting to stir up attention in May. I do not think Julio Jones has anything but a Falcon on his helmet come September. With that said, I don't know freaking anything, guys. Like I don't have any inside sources or whatever. So maybe he is traded, but I don't know. Like to me, I'm torn because like when the Mac Jones rumors started coming out, I was like, this is absurd. I'm going to stick to my guns. And then all of a sudden, Schefter, Daniel Jeremiah, people that actually are in the end start talking about this. And then they end up being wrong. So look, I'm not going to sit here and say those guys aren't excellent at their jobs. They got false information from whoever, but I don't know. I feel like trusting my gut from now on. And by from now on, I mean this 2021 offseason, I do not think Julio Jones goes elsewhere. If he does go somewhere else. I think the top two destinations are the same top two destinations we were talking about all draft season, the Green Bay Packers and the Tennessee Titans. Anytime you can have that sort of just target share pretty much guaranteed for you. I mean, Julio Jones going to Green Bay or Tennessee is, easily clearing 100 targets. And, Tannehill, obviously, okay, Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback is a little bit better than Ryan Tannehill. And by a little bit, I mean a lot better. But either way, you're sitting pretty with the situation. So to me, fantasy-wise, I would say Packers over Titans, but we're pretty happy either way it goes.
And truth be told, any moment I expect Collinsworth's chair to slide in behind you, Ian. So he will give us the scoop. No, just kidding. He's the man.
The GOAT.
The GOAT. And it's silly to think about it. I mean, Matt in the chat wants to know about the Packers. Is it true that they told Rodgers to shut up and play football? I mean, at this point in the offseason, what does it matter? I mean, these guys haven't moved, so there's nothing really to talk about. The hypotheticals are hot and heavy right now because what else are we going to talk about? Rookies are kind of not sexy anymore because it's already happened. We've seen some, mini camps and things like that, but what else is there to talk about? So things like this keep people going. I don't see either happening. As much as my Lions homerism would love to see Aaron Rodgers to go anywhere else out of the North, I could easily see, both these guys on their teams, just like Ian said. So, I'm not going to buy into any of the hype. Ultimately, lots of teams could use Julio. If he goes to the Patriots, though, I will tell you guys, that's a terrible decision. I mean, what is that going to do to his target share? I mean, what is he going to get? 75, 80 receptions maybe with Cam? Maybe?
Let's be clear though. 32 teams are better
absolutely.
with Julio than without.
100%.
I mean, I got pissed when I think it was Rhapsody, who I'm awfully critical of, but he does his job pretty good most of the times. But they said at one point it was like, they described Julio's contract as bad because it's a lot of money. I was like, no, you want to pay the best players in the National Football League a lot of money. And that is all that Julio Jones has been. He was honestly from 2013 to 2016, so far, with all due respect to Antonio Brown, if you just want to look at yards per route, and I think we should value touchdowns more, but if you just want to look at yards per route run, Julio Jones is the only guy 3 in the past decade with his amount of targets that he's been getting. And even in these last 2 years where he hasn't been, quite the same monster, he's still a top 5 receiver in the league. It's absolutely ridiculous what he's done. So wherever he goes, and honestly, man, it is scary because he does not have a no trade clause. I don't care if he goes on Undisputed and says he doesn't want to go to the Cowboys. The Cowboys somehow find a way to offer them more trade capital. They should absolutely trade him there. There is the whole debate, the whole Houston Texans treating JJ Watt with all that class and not getting anything for him and just letting him go wherever. You can say that, you will, but don't send him to the Lions, but don't also send him to 3 or 4 teams you think can win a Super Bowl. If you're Atlanta, go get what you can. Don't also piss on Julio's theoretical.
Well, and if I'm Detroit, I'm not trading anything. I'm not offering a pick because you're rebuilding stuff.
Yeah.
What good does that do you? I mean, come on, really? Yeah. What else you got, mistress?
And we're building around Amon St. Brown. Brown.
Let him have as many targets as possible. Give him all the targets so he can get up to speed quick and then move on. Mr. Sullivan, what do you got? What else?
Yeah.
What else are we talking about?
Well, I think Julio is getting traded first and foremost, just because of the fact that the Falcons don't have any money currently. They're rumored not to be able to pay their rookie class. And the reality is, before June 1st, it's a $40.5 million dead cap. And after June 1st, they save $17.5 million. So it makes a lot of sense. And in my podcast, I had 7 different teams that I think he could go to. Personally, I want him to go to the Chargers because I think that would be fun as hell. And they would be able to run that trio of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Julio Jones with Justin Herbert back there and Eckler in the backfield, a revamped offensive line. That's fun for me. That's fun for fantasy. That's just fun. So maybe he gets traded, maybe he doesn't. I don't really know. So sticking to Aaron Rodgers. So he didn't report to Lambeau for the voluntary OTAs, which I don't think anybody thought he was going to. Not a surprise. And my question that's already been answered is, does he play for Green Bay this year?
Man, it would work. Just put them in any offense and it works. I would say that I respected the way Green Bay went about the free agency and draft cycle, just in terms of getting Amari Rodgers a locked in kind of slot receiver. Because to me, Marquez Valdes-Scantling isn't someone they need to actively look to replace. Could you? Sure, but Julio Jones, Will Fuller, again, these are guys that any offense should want to have. So I understand not splurging on a guy that at the end of the day you just want to have a wide receiver opposite of Devontae Adams that defenses got to be a little bit concerned about if you don't give that cornerback safety help. And I think MVS really does fit that mold. I know the drops have been excruciating, but you know what? The guys rack up drops. I don't want to say it's a good thing if you're dropping passes, but if you purely want to go by a drop leaderboard, you're going to end up with a list of pretty good wide receivers that just happen to get open and accordingly get targeted a lot. So for me, Allen Lazard, he's fine. I think he's a solid number 4 wide receiver, but someone to really fill that slot, that almost like prime Randall Cobb role for me was the missing ingredient in that Packers offense. We'll see if Rodgers, Amari ends up being that guy. I was hoping, Elijah Moore, a little bit more draft capital would have been sunk into that position. Even Curtis Samuel, oh man, that free agency signing was on my dream list. But either way, I am happy that they were more attacking in the slot. Julio, hey, that is probably going to get Aaron Rodgers to be happier than he has been in months. So if you want to go that route, go ahead. I'll take Julio over MVS any day. If you aren't going to sink a lot of investment in it, though, I think slot over the field stretcher position is the way to go.
Yeah, I think it's just silly to think about, I can see Aaron Rodgers being the host of Jeopardy. I mean, who knows?
He just won an MVP. He's not leaving.
Listen, Aaron Rodgers can do whatever he wants to do, and it wouldn't surprise me. The way that guy handles his business, fair. I'm like, okay. If he told me he was going to go run a country club, like, all right, well, fine, whatever. I still think he's in Green Bay. I mean, as much as there's been a lot to do about it, he was in the playoffs last year. I know that he wasn't happy, and maybe he's got some beef with ownership or whatever the case may be. We don't know the truth. He hasn't said a lot, and the team hasn't said a lot. So ultimately, if there isn't a trade, they'll be together. That's really all it comes down to. And Aaron Rodgers is smart to stay in Green Bay. I mean, you've easily got a very straight path to the playoffs. Chicago's your only competition, and with a rookie quarterback, he can beat that.
Hey.
Come on. The Vikings and the Lions are in the middle of trying to fix some big problems. And, you keep trading away cornerbacks that keep getting in trouble after you draft them the year before. So it's...
Well, we don't need to hang on to them.
So if I'm Aaron Rodgers, this is the easiest way to get to the playoffs. Why am I jumping ship to go to another team that may or may not make it? People are talking about him going to Denver. Why do you go to Denver? You're not going to have an easy road to the playoffs, facing Kansas City twice. You're
still going to make the playoffs
but
in Denver.
Probably, yes. But that's a tougher road than just sitting in the North and just walking to the playoffs, in my mind at least.
Well, walking to the playoffs and walking to the NFC Championship game and getting walloped isn't exactly the recipe either, right? So, I don't know. I'm a card-carrying member of Vikings Nation, so I put my head down on my pillow every night, and I fall asleep, and I'm cozy and I'm comfy because I dream of Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay, leaving that division.
Yo, speaking of the Vikings, today I put 4 bets down on Super Bowl odds. I did think the Chiefs and Buccaneers, I got the Chiefs at plus 400, Buccaneers at plus 475. Gun to my head, I do think, we see just a repeat Super Bowl matchup. That's lame. I understand history doesn't tell us that all that often, but I just think they're the best 2 teams in out of the conference. But the 2 value odds I took, man, were 1, the Cleveland Browns at plus 1250. I just think, the way their offense was humming, the defense was the issue. And by golly, if they haven't fixed it, they've at least done a pretty damn good job trying throughout free agency and the draft alike. And also the Minnesota Vikings plus 3850, man. Mike Zimmer, this was his first bad defense really ever. Kirk Cousins, low-key, has had the 2 best years of his career over the past 2 years. I'm not saying Cousins is going to necessarily drag your team to the Super Bowl, but if you have a Super Bowl ready team, I don't think Cousins is going to, necessarily halt that hype train either. So, for me, the Vikings, and playing along with that, if Rodgers leaves, dominate the division, maybe get that first round bye, and crazier things have happened. So to see the Vikings treated as like a middle of the pack team ahead of last year was surprising to me because the defense as a whole, but if I look at like the Titans, the Seahawks, and the Vikings, these really good offenses with bad defenses, I feel like the Vikings have improved that and have more of a reason to be at least considered, an average group ahead of 2021.
God love you for that bet. I just hope you didn't put too much money down on it.
No,
just after all.
We just got one unit. We're not going too crazy.
All right, that's cool. Last one, quick one, news and notes wise. The Lions tight end coach Ben Johnson says the sky is the limit for TJ Hawkinson this year. So my question is, what is TJ Hawkinson's ceiling this year?
It's freaking.
No, I was just gonna say wide receiver one. I mean, that's what he is in Detroit. He's their top option,
Bro, it's what we saw from Tyler Higbee at the end of 2019. It's what caused him to be the freaking, tight end 5 or 6 inexplicably, even though we knew Gerald Everett coming back. The thing is, Gerald Everett is not living in Michigan right now, so we are good people. And, I've heard some haters come out and be like, well, if Gerald Everett's the reason why you're not getting the targets, you shouldn't be getting them anyway. Whatever your freaking opinion is, the Gerald Everett of Detroit would have been Jesse James, and now he's not in the picture either. So Hawkinson, if you followed him over the past 2 years, he was the tight end 5 or 6 last year. He already had a great year. I understand, tight end 3 or 4 to tight end 11 didn't have all that much of a difference between them, but Hawkinson had a good year. He had a good year while playing 70% of the snaps because Jesse James was way more involved than anyone would have hoped for. And now we got Jared Goff, who's honestly as good, if not more of a tight end feeder than Matthew Stafford. The difference is Higbee no longer has to deal with having the best defense in the league and had this run first offense. So for me, Higbee is someone that, I've just been rocketing up the ranks. And it's just another example of don't let yesterday's mistake, influence your fantasy draft tomorrow. I think it's a completely new situation. I'd equate it to Joe Mixon. We can't just say we got burnt on Higbee last year and just not draft him in 2021 because of that. Same, it's a new situation. It's a freaking primary part of the offense, and Gerald Everett removed, just like Giovanni Bernard got removed from Cincinnati. So Tyler Higbee, people, if you can get a top 3 tight end, one of Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, I would still advise on doing that if you can. But if not, Higbee is certainly, someone that sticks out to me in that, borderline tight end 1 range for sure.
I like it. I think Hawkinson could go literally sky's the limit, exactly like you said. He could be a top 5 tight end quite easily. And
Hawkinson,
don't sleep.
And Higbee, yeah.
Higbee too. And don't sleep on Gerald Everett in Seattle either. I love that spot for him with his old tight ends coach as his offensive coordinators. So I like it. But Brad, that's all I got for news and notes, man. So take it away.
Now that we've already had fun, let's get to the fun stuff. All right. So I know that, 2020 feels like forever ago, but we had a sexy draft class. There was a lot of really talented guys that came out last year. Some of them didn't perform up to expectations. Now we got to talk about who we're buying. So I would like to try to hit some on every level. So we'll talk about quarterback, running back, wide receiver. There's probably only one true tight end to talk about, but, we'll put tight end up there as well. So Ian, we'll let you go first. Let's hit quarterbacks. Who's a guy that you're targeting that is either undervalued or you're getting at a good value, or somebody that you think just could explode this year?
To me, the primary late round quarterback, as much. First of all, I crack up when people are like, Jalen Hurts late round QB season. I like Jalen Hurts too, people, but he's a top 10 QB. Enter 100%. one best ball draft before you freaking market me about that shit. So, with that said, I will go with Ryan Fitzpatrick as my favorite late round QB because look, we got bad news in February or March or some shit when Ron Rivera was I'm not going to name him the starting QB because Ron Rivera is an old school, freaking wants his guys to play for him. We want everyone to compete at every position type of coach. What talks? Money talks, draft capital talks. What have the Washington football team done at the quarterback position? Absolutely nothing since signing Ryan Fitzpatrick. Credit to Taylor Heineke for having, a much better wild card game than anybody would have expected. Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to win this job. And when he wins this job, man, he's going to be throwing to Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Diami Brown, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson. He has arguably the best group of weapons, I don't want to say his career because I had to go back like 15 years to check every single roster, but it's at a minimum a very good group of weapons. And we just look recently, and it is a little bit concerning. I understand why he's going where he is, because how much longer can a perennial boomer bust quarterback keep booming like no other? But man, in 2018, in weeks 1 through 3, while Jameis was suspended, he was the QB1. 2019, once they were like, you know what, Josh Rosen, we get it, you suck. It's your job, Ryan. In weeks he was the QB2 only behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. And even in 2020, man, he was the QB8 before Tua took his job. I get the Dolphins playing Tua over Fitzpatrick. You drafted the guy 5th overall. You want to see what he's got in him and all that. But if anyone watched the Dolphins games last year, like Fitz was routinely trying to bail them out at the end. They had no receivers for the last month and a half of the season. And Fitz was just objectively better than Tua in a pretty mediocre situation overall. So now for him to go to a good situation, and again, with no competition, we still see him going like QB 20 or later. So to me, Fitzpatrick, as the rookies continue to fly up the ranks and stuff, let's just when you look at these quarterbacks, just be like, all right, well, Fitzpatrick maybe QB 20 ADP. Where would you rank him in week 1 though? Like when it finally comes time to playing it, I think we're going to see like a borderline QB1. So Ryan Fitzpatrick to me is a guy that I've been just circling and getting in every single late round.
All right. So follow-up question. Of the guys who were drafted in 2020, who is a quarterback that you think could shoot up and really take the next step in 2021?
I think Tua deserves a benefit of the doubt with this, because I don't think people realize quite how bad things were. And I know I just said Fitzpatrick was objectively better than Tua, and he was, because Ryan Fitzpatrick has been a good quarterback for the past 3 years. And guess what? Now he's out of the picture for Tua, and they haven't added anybody else to compete with him. So here are the wide receivers targets during Tua's starts last year: Devontae Parker, Lynn Bowden, Jakeem Grant, Mac Hollins, Isaiah Ford, Malcolm Perry, Preston Williams, Antonio Callaway. Brutal, people.
Good Lord.
I have like a minute-long highlight film on Twitter I sent out of Tua throwing dimes that got dropped. I know you can do that for other quarterbacks as well, but just realize, for a dude, when the most effed up offseason we've seen with COVID, coming off a brutal hip injury, and then going to an offense that is pretty freaking far from fantasy friendly, I think Tua has a major step to go forward, because they got 2 guys with terrifyingly fast speed, man. Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller. I'm all aboard. I've always been all aboard. Every week is Will Fuller week and all that. Even if you're a hater, at worst, Will Fuller is an A+ field stretcher out there. Jalen Waddle at worst is going to be a yak monster and someone that you never want to ignore in underneath areas of the field. And you got Devontae Parker, who's just, 1 year off a 1,200-yard season. So to me, great defense. I'm not so far in on Tua in fantasy, just because we have seen that he's not, exactly going to run when he needs to. He only had 1 finish last year inside the top 15 in his weeks. So I think even if he improves in efficiency, it's not necessarily going to be this super fantasy-friendly box score. But in terms of just kind of the second-year quarterbacks that aren't getting as much benefit of the doubt as they should, I think Tua could certainly be better than people are giving him respect for now.
There you go. Mr. Sullivan, who's your quarterback that you think could have a nice 2021 that was a 2020 rookie?
Well, I think Jalen Hurts can, but I think you're going to have to pay way too much to go and get him. Tua's a good answer. And if I'm throwing darts and I want to buy a guy cheap, why the hell not? I'll go buy Jordan Love. You never know what's going to happen in Green Bay.
We're just going to keep digging into those Packer fans out there. You know what? Jordan Love's season is upon us,
everybody
baby.
Everybody needs something on the bench, and I could have easily gone, Jacob Eason or deeper down, but that's just not happening. So I'm not really sure Jordan Love gets that job. Even if Aaron Rodgers leaves, I still have this weird Blake Bortles sensation tingling through my body, but who knows?
Drew Locke gets sent over. Let's go.
Outside of the Locke family, I might be the only guy that still likes that quarterback. I think
you like Drew Locke too.
Absolutely.
Come on, the guy was 7th in big time throw rate last year. At least he makes good happen in between the bad that everyone likes to highlight. Give me that over Sam Darnold, who's just straight up bad the entire time.
Okay, so come on. This might actually legit be 5 hours tonight, because you look at Drew Locke, who had an injury-plagued rookie season. He was on COVID protocol. He was in a shit show of a situation in 2020.
His whole offense was hurt last year.
Right.
Everyone wants to talk about their skill position. They were all hurt.
Give him a full offseason with who got career bests out of Sam Bradford and Case Keenum, Drew Locke will be just fine, folks.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
You're very welcome. Brad, get control of this show, my man.
No, you know what? You got to have fun sometimes. You got to go crazy. Drew Lock crazy is what we're going tonight. And the other name that nobody's really talking about right now, but I'm sure is not cheap, but Joe Burrow. He was doing very well as a rookie before he got hurt. They did a little bit to help him on the offensive line side of things. Burrow is going to be a guy that should have a solid 2021 as long as he's healthy and he doesn't take too many shots to that knee. I still like him a lot too. Tua I think is a sexy choice because they have a lot of weapons around him. I think you guys made some very good points, but don't sleep on the number 1 overall pick. I think he should bounce back nicely. And add Jamar Chase doesn't hurt either. I mean, no big deal.
In terms of pure rankings, I got Burrow QB 10 out of everyone, so I am with you. He is certainly the 2020 guy
sure.
Chase this year.
I just got him in the second round of a Superflex startup around the turn, and I was thrilled.
He's just a player people aren't really thinking that much about. But I've gone and acquired him in a couple spots for a fair price. I mean, it's still a little, it's still not paying, what we would have paid last year at this time, but get a little discount.
Right. You're not paying what you would have paid to trade up to the 101 last year, so that's value. Right.
All right, Sullivan. So we'll let you jump on running back. So who is your 2021 second year guy that you like that you're all over?
So I swear to God, I really don't like the Green Bay Packers, but it's AJ Dillon. I think he's a good value add. You look at the fact that Aaron Jones's career high in touches is 285. The Packers don't want him to be a 3-down bell cow workhorse of a running back. Dillon showed us a little bit of juice towards the end of the season with Jamal Williams in Detroit. I think there's a split role there for him. I think he's cheap, and I think he's the guy that definitely works. But if there's a guy you want to add that I really think is about to take off, it's Antonio Gibson.
Nice.
Well, and you got to think how much, how many touches and how much action Jamal Williams now leaves behind in Green Bay. I mean, just picking that up, AJ Dillon then will add, 400, 500, 600 yards rushing and a little bit maybe in the receiving. I mean, he becomes a little more viable. He'd obviously, short of an injury, isn't going to become super sexy, but I don't hate the A.J. Dillon pick at all. I mean, because he's a solid player and he showed well when he had opportunities last year. He looked good. Ian, who is your year 2 running back that you're jumping all over? Obviously, Antonio Gibson, you're more than welcome to talk about him as well because Sullivan's took 2 there.
No, I think with Dillon, it's just a good example of one of the things I try to preach a lot, which is like we want to, when possible, buy players at their floor versus at their ceiling. And that's exactly what Dillon is. I mean, even the haters, even the people that don't like A.J. Dillon, like if you want to go through and make a projection for every team, like he's probably going to have an ADP similar to where you're like projecting him. And that's not the case for a lot of these guys. So yeah, just in terms of pure value, I think Dillon makes a lot of sense. So I am basically on the Cam Akers RB1 train for this class, even ahead of Jonathan Taylor and Antonio Gibson. Now, I'm not saying I would say out of those 3 backs, if I was GM of a team and I had to pick someone, Akers might very well be last in that order of players. But to me, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, like they are absolutely going to lose targets to Nyheim Hines and J.D. McKissick, respectively. Cam Akers has a chance to get the freaking 2017 to 2019 Todd Gurley role, which is as fantasy friendly as anyone outside of Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley can attest to. So for me, with Akers, like we saw him last year really take over down the stretch. I know Henderson got hurt at the very end, but man, Akers was even taking over before that. Malcolm Brown left. They said, whatever, we don't care. And before last year, man, if you can just, widen your kind of perspective on the Rams backfield for more than just 16 games, like Sean McVay gave his RB1, usually Todd Gurley, sometimes CJ Anderson, sometimes even Malcolm Brown. 48 out of 52 games that RB1 had at least a 60% snap rate. And for me, Cam Akers is going to be that guy. So I don't think Darrell Henderson is bad, but just in terms of, who has the chance to have that 90% everything, 3-down workhorse role we want to, I think Cam Akers makes a lot of sense, man. And that's why for me, he's at the top of my tier 3 with running backs where, I feel so weird every time I talk like Cam Akers over Jonathan Taylor and people are like, oh my God, you're crazy. And I'm like, well, Akers is my RB9, Taylor's my RB11.
Right.
Like, it's not that big of a difference between the guys. I'm not out on Jonathan Taylor. I'm not out on Antonio Gibson, but for me, just if we want to think about, particularly in these best ball tournaments and stuff where you're playing for best case scenario imaginable, Cam Akers has that in spades over pretty much anybody else.
And as soon as Marlon Mack re-upped with Indy, I had that same thought. Like, okay, what does this do to Taylor and Hines? And yes, Marlon Mack's not Jonathan Taylor, not even close, but they didn't bring him back to just leave him on the bench. He'll get involved in some way, shape, or form. Akers, he has a monopoly on that backfield. Darrell Henderson will get some action and he will spell him, but not nearly to the same level of Taylor or CEH or some of these other guys that are going to have plenty of other guys rotating in and out of the backfield. So I think Akers is a perfect option. I would tell people Deandre Swift in Detroit, they're going to need to run, and they have that offensive line to do that. Adding Penei Sewell at 7 was highway robbery. Like, he is the best offensive lineman in the draft, and he fell all the way down to 7. They're going to be able to run the ball. So Deandre Swift is a guy you can't sleep on. You're probably not getting him insanely cheap, but he's a guy that should produce very nicely. When it comes to at the end of the year, when you look at the 2020 running backs as a whole, he's probably, in the 3 or 4 conversation. So Akers in my mind, and then, Taylor, and then, you have to have Deandre Swift as kind of that next man up that's probably going to get around 1,000 yards rushing, would be my guess. And then you got to factor in receiving as well, because TJ Hawkinson can't get all the receptions and Amon-Ra's a rookie. But the other name we don't want to sleep on is James Robinson. I know that everybody's down on him because he isn't Urban's guy, but he's going to get involved. They kept him and Etienne have some sort of role. I'm not throwing him on the list as somebody you should run after and buy, but don't fall asleep on the guy. He did produce extremely well for a UDFA last year, and there is some role in this offense because Darrell Bevel uses multiple running backs. That's the type of offensive coordinator he is. So I got to think that Urban's going to empower Bevel to be able to do what he does, which is, share the workload between a couple running backs. So I don't hate on James Robinson. I'm definitely not running after to buy him, but if you can get him for super cheap, I would add him to my roster and at least see what they do with him. I still think Etienne's the guy there, but just throwing the name out there because I know people in the chat will love the James Robinson conversation.
Damn it, people. I love James Robinson. You all love James Robinson. Everyone here loves James Robinson. Urban Meyer does not love James Robinson. And that's ultimately what matters. Damn, I'm sorry. You had a great year with him last year. I'm sorry you didn't sell on him earlier. Don't let that, just yesterday's, RB1, mistake you for tomorrow, though. I think it's going to be a problem, man. And honestly, the more Urban keeps talking and the more personnel moves keep being made, are we going to see his offense at the NFL level? Because my goodness, man, as a Columbus, Ohio native, look, I love Urban Meyer. That passing game before Ryan Day got there was an absolute tragedy. And I would pray, he's a smart guy. He knows more in his little finger about football than I will my entire life. I get that. I hope Bevel is in charge of the passing game, and I hope Urban is doing his thing in the running game. But the more I hear about ETN playing the Percy Harvin role, I'm like, holy shit, Urban is not just being the CEO. He wants to freaking run the whole damn thing, which shouldn't be surprising because he's always been a control freak. But, with James Robinson, for me, the second they signed Carlos Hyde, I was like, it's a problem. And you were talking about Marlon Mack before. I'm with you. Marlon Mack in and of itself is concerning. Carlos Hyde in and of himself isn't that concerning. But when we have a coach with history with the player that is seemingly set on at least, adjusting their committee to feature this extra guy, that's not great. We only have a couple, true workhorse 1 RB committees these days. Even if, Carlos Hyde is getting 20, 30% snaps and just making it from 2 to 3, that could be a difference between ETN or James Robinson, being fantasy viable or just being, a flex kind of dart option.
There you go. The only other name that we haven't brought up that the chat is asking about is Zach Moss. Ian.
What about Dobbins?
Yeah, Dobbins too.
What about CEH? You could make an argument for almost anybody in this
Fair.
2020 running back class.
Also is legit a great late round target right now. I mean, I would like to think Josh Allen is not going to rush for 8 touchdowns every single year. And one of the studies, I barked about this on a couple podcasts. I keep saying someone needs to look us up, so I might as well freaking do it myself. But I want to see how mobile quarterbacks, like when you're a mobile quarterback, it would make sense that as you become a veteran, as you become better at passing, as you're not just, running like a chicken with his head cut off every play, that you would start running less. So we have a Bills backfield. This is a offense that I think most people expect to be a top 5 unit. They added Matt Breida to replace TJ Yeldon. Like, Zach Moss is the most 3-down ready back there. Most of his issues last year were just kind of getting hurt. He might have been on the COVID list. Like, to me, he is the favorite well over Devin Singletary and I think the ADP reflects that and everything. But man, like, he's a great late round back, because the second Josh Allen doesn't just run for freaking 8+ rushing touchdowns a year, we're going to have at least an RB2 in Buffalo. And it's just another player that we can buy so cheap as it is, man. So, instead of going, at Tampa Bay or one of these, Tampa Bay, like a situation that's going to be 3 or 4 backs, at least give me a shot at the one backfield that could be the freaking Zach Moss show in the best case scenario.
So you guys brought up CEH. Rob, what's your take on CEH? Are we going to see a guy take over this backfield, or is this Kansas City offense going to continue to run so many running backs that he becomes kind of more of a best ball choice than a weekly starter?
I think he's got a top 12 ceiling, and I think he has probably a legitimate mid RB2 where he finished last year floor. I think it's humorous to me what ADP can do to a player, the opinion you have of a player, because the fantasy community went crazy last year when Damian Williams opted out, and all of a sudden CEH shot up into being a top 5 startup back, which was insanity. So that's all he could do to make people happy, and he didn't. But let's take a look at the guy's numbers before he got hurt. Like, he was fine, and he is fine. And he's like, what did he finish? He was like the RB 17 or something last year, I think, in 13 games. And look, any piece of that offense, I am more than happy to have a piece of. If I could take an outside lineman off that team that would make me fantasy points, I would. Is he going to catch more passes? Yes. Is he going to be a dominant 3-down back? No. But, I wrote an article last year about Andy Reid rookie running backs, and it was to combat the ADP myth of CEH. And if you look back at McCoy, if you look back at Westbrook, if you look back at his best backs, they didn't have great rookie seasons, but they took off in years 2 and 3. And I think that's what CEH can do in that offense. They didn't fill one of those wide receiver spots that they wanted to this year. So maybe it's some wheel routes for CEH, and he can do some damage with it. But I think he's a good guy to have on your fantasy team with a top 12 ceiling all day long.
Before they added Le'Veon Bell, only Joe Mixon, Zeke, and Derrick Henry have more touches. And I'm with you, man. It's because he was that top 5 pick that people are acting like he was so bad last year, man. If you just look at pure like ADP difference between last year and this year, the only 4 running backs I found, the top 24 that had a double-digit difference, are Kenyon Drake, James Conner, Mark Ingram, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Obviously, Drake, Conner, Ingram, each on a new team. Yeah, I would expect them to fall a great deal. But CEH down 13 spots via Fantasy Football Calculator. Like, my goodness, buy this dude. Le'Veon's gone. And even when Le'Veon was there, man, I understand the splits aren't great, but you got to realize, like, there were a couple games in there where it was just Mahomes going freaking apeshit on everybody. And like Clyde started every game he was in on. Honestly, Le'Veon was more of an issue for Darrell Williams than even CEH. So for me, it's a great opportunity to, again, buy someone at their floor. And even if he's not going to be, quite the top 5 guy he was hyped up to be, now you don't have to buy him at that price anyway. So who gives a shit? And yeah, I mean, in terms of Andy Reid's top running backs, over the last 2 years, it's been the only time I'm looking at this right now. Literally, wow, this is wild. From 2004 to 2018, the only twice that Andy Reid not have a top 8 PPR running back in terms of points per game. Last 2 years, Damon Williams, RB25, Clyde in terms of PPR points per game, RB21. But again, you look at both those instances, they were just weird kind of running backs coming in and out, not getting the full role. And I do think the fact that, again, don't trust me for it. Look at what the Chiefs did at the running back position this entire offseason. They let Le'Veon walk. They didn't draft anybody of note. They didn't add anybody of note. They just brought back Darrell Williams. So, yeah, for me, Clyde, even though I would take, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson ahead of him, he's right there in that tier. And I think where he's being drafted, he's certainly a value.
So what we're saying, 2020 running backs are all sexy. Go get them all. Just buy them. Just make it rain 2020 running backs, people. But this is the perfect time because they're all in their rookie contract window. You're going to get the best version of them, hopefully. I mean, it's a good time to buy. Mr. Sullivan, we're talking wide receivers now. Who is a second-year wide receiver that you are targeting? And you can't say Justin Jefferson because he's probably the tops of this class right now. So you got to pick somebody that isn't on your team.
Yeah, no. It really comes down to how deep you want to go on receivers here. Like, there's a lot of guys that I wrote down as I was getting ready for this. I think the guy that I probably want to add the most is probably Laviska Shenault. I think he's got a great opportunity coming up for him. But another guy, and this goes back to my Drew Locke admiration, is Jerry Judy is way undervalued. The man had 100 targets last year. I think he had a sickly, disgusting catch rate of about 46 or 48%. But look at the quarterbacks that were throwing Jerry Judy the football last year. Like, it's terrible, right? So
take it easy. You got two Drew Locke truthers in here.
Jerry Judy was the best route runner in that class last year.
He dropped enough passes.
I think he dropped 12, right? I think he was second to Deontay Johnson, who dropped 16. But here's the thing. And yes, he dropped passes, but he got 100 targets. And Cortland Sutton's coming back. That's going to help Jerry Judy, not hurt him, in my opinion. He's going to have a little bit more space out there. And I'd even go so far as to wanting to buy at a much, much, much reduced price KJ Hamler as well. Who knows?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And look, I was also just kind of tongue-in-cheeking you on the
I know you
on the drop number. Number 3 on that list, DK Metcalf. I don't think anyone has any problem, man. Again, you look at these leaderboards. One of my favorite stats has been like the 2012 leaderboard and like guys that dropped at least 10 passes. And you see like AJ Green, Des Bryant, Jimmy Graham, all these future, just absolute studs. So again, more of a metric for what is a guy getting open or not. And yeah, man, and honestly, Jerry Judy, he's the guy where, especially in Dynasty, go get him right now because that QB situation could absolutely improve in a heartbeat. I would just say, man, I think in Dynasty land, for me, it's Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, 1-2. But you look at Amari Cooper's contract, man, he could be out of there in a year or two. And if so, and if CeeDee Lamb looks even a little bit as good as he looked last year, my goodness, dude. Because for me, CeeDee, he did thing I would want to see out of him other than just kind of be this physical yards after the catch guy. That's because he's 21 years old still, man. He's just going to fill out. He's only going to get better. And I just think that, having now Dak Prescott cemented there for such a long time is only just better for him. So, fantastic class of receivers. And, I wouldn't fault, I'm not saying C is necessarily a value at where he's going, but I just think, with the Cowboys, it wouldn't shock me if CD is the most productive receiver this year over Amari Cooper. Who should you have on your fantasy team? Ideally both, but CD, man, he's not being overhyped, man. This guy is that good. He has that sort of target. That sort of target share coming his way, and it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only other name I really would throw out there that I feel like the guy got a bad rap last year is Jalen Ringer over in Philly. Think about what they had last year. I mean, that team was just on a dumpster fire. I mean, just bad things were happening across the board. Jalen Ringer coming into it, Rick will attest to it in our chat, our fearless leader. Him and I were very high on Jalen Ringer. I think a year in the system with Devonta Smith across from him, I think will really be beneficial. Goddard, if they keep Ertz, I mean, they have weapons. I think it'll help. Another year in the system with Hurts together. I'm a fan of Jalen Ringer. I'm buying him if I can. I have acquired him in one league in a trade come draft time because I'll tell you, people, if you haven't had your rookie drafts, that's the perfect time to add guys from the previous draft in and on the packages because people go crazy for rookie picks. I got Jalen Ringer as a pseudo throw-in on a deal for somebody to move up into, I think, the top 4 or 5 in a super flex draft. I was like, throw me an extra wide receiver. I'm done. I'll take it. So Rager's a guy I would jump on him for a fair price. And hope that, you get a guy who gets you closer to, 1,000 yards receiving, because I expect them to be on the field regularly. Devonta Smith's clearly their wide receiver one, but Rager is a guy who is just a dirty dude. He is a strong, physical receiver, very good at the point of catch, and I'm all over him. I'm a big fan.
He was saying today he's locked in as their slot receiver, man. My only concern is that Jalen Hurts is just not a good passer. If you look at most of his metrics from last year, it's not good. But again, that could just be a one-year situation. Jalen Ringer is still, seemingly locked in as the wide receiver 2 there at worst for at least the next 3 years. I mean, I know coming out, he was the one guy where it was we had to kind of take a step back on a lot of his metrics because his QB situation was that bad under center. And, last year, his second game or maybe even first game, he caught this beautiful 50, 60-yard catch over his shoulder. And then he got hurt. And then he had to deal with freaking Carson Wentz and then Jalen Hurts under center. It was hardly a situation. Again, it was, after the guy went through what he did at TCU in the 2020, hardly a situation for him to thrive in, and you're not getting him any cheaper than he is now. So
Absolutely.
For sure, man.
All right, so I'd say let's talk tight ends, but there's really only one tight end to talk about, I would anticipate.
No, there's two.
Who is the other one? Everybody knows one of them.
Well, you're on Team Cole Kmet, so I'll let you have that one. But the other one's Adam Troutman. What are we doing here? This man is a good football player, and I don't really know what the offense is going to look like in New Orleans. I'm pretty sure Jameis is going to be the guy to start, but I don't know if he's going to be. My fear with that offense is that Taysom Hill is the red zone quarterback, but at the same time, I really think that Adam Troutman was starting to slowly, he had 38 PPR fantasy points last year, but you look at some of the routes that he runs for a man that size. He puts himself in the position to catch the ball. He's really good with his hands. I just think he's going to create some space and really help that offense out. And will he be a top 12 tight end in 2021? Probably not. But in
maybe though.
Well, he only needs 9.5 points a week to do that. But at the end of the day, I think he is a dynasty investment. That get him now while you can, because he's going to be expensive going forward.
Dude, I have Troutman in my tier 4. Only guys I have definitively ahead of him: Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, Hawkinson, Pitts, Andrews, and Goddard. Now I have him at the bottom of tier 4, so
sure.
I would take guys like Fant, Tunyon, Thomas, Higbee, whoever over him. But I get it, man. And if you're talking about the same route I did against the Falcons, I'm looking at my article and I like to put some videos in it. And man, he runs this pivot route against the Falcons from the slot, and you're just oh shit. And that's why, yeah. And
it was your article. That's where I saw it. I was like, holy shit.
There we go, man. Yeah. There we go. And that he was drafted out of Dayton. He had 10 plus touchdowns his last year there. He's a receiving first tight end somehow. And look, I think our PFF player grades get a bad rap. People just shit on them when they're wrong. No other statistics get this sort of scrutiny. No one statistic is an all-encompassing thing for a player. So no, should you base your entire knowledge base on PFF grades? No, but they can also help tell the story. And Troutman was the number 1 tight end in run blocking. Do I think he is the best blocking tight end in the league? No. But the fact they let go of Jared Cook tells me that clearly the Saints think he's good enough to be their 3-down guy. And man, you look at Jameis, the whole reason for the OJ Howard hype over the years was because not only was he great, but because we thought Cameron Brate would chill the hell out and Jameis would focus on one tight end. That didn't come to fruition, but now hopefully it's going to be Jameis zeroing in on Adam freaking Troutman. So I'm with you there, man. I think he is the number 1 guy. Cole Kmet, look, flash at the end of the year. I get it. I think he's someone you can prioritize later. Can they cut Jimmy Graham though? I don't get it, man. Because you look at the Aaron Rodgers and the Julio Jones trades. If you go over the cap and you look at their contracts, it makes sense for teams to trade them after June 1st. There's a lot of contracts like that where you cut them. You should do it after June 1st. Maybe they come to an agreement, but it just timing makes sense sometimes. But Jamison Crowder and Jimmy Graham are 2 guys that we expect to be cut. And you look at their contracts, and it's not a June 1st thing. It's just they just haven't been cut. And I don't know why. So for me, Cole Kmet is going to shoot up the ranks once Jimmy Graham gets cut. Will he get cut? I don't know. We know he won't be traded because for whatever reason, Matt Nagy gave Jimmy Graham a no trade clause and do never let people.
Yeah, and Cole Kmet would have been my guy that I said you go and buy now because in 2022 he's not going to be as affordable as he is right now. Jimmy Graham is the only reason that Kmet is not going to outproduce Adam Troutman this year. If Jimmy Graham leaves, then you can have the conversation about who produces better fantasy wise. But right now, if right now is how the season plays out and Graham is ahead of Cole Kmet on that depth chart, Adam Troutman's got an easier route to being a more productive tight end, and the other name you guys didn't mention was Josh Hill in New Orleans. They let him go, and obviously then he retired, but he was their run blocker in a lot of games. So I'm a big fan of Adam Troutman. I think he can develop nicely, more so because they just don't have any other options. He's going to get the lion's share because the team seems to believe in him and the opportunity's there. Cole Kmet of the two, though, is my favorite because Notre Dame tight ends, man, for whatever it is, they just ball. And I'm telling you people now, Michael Mayer, go get that kid if you're in Devy leagues. I know, I'm the only degenerate on this conversation in Devy leagues, but I have Michael Mayer already. I took him as a true freshman. Another Notre Dame tight end that just can do it all, has a plus speed, athletic profile, and Cole Kmet's the same way. He can do it. He can do it all. But Jimmy Graham needs to get out of the way already. And but I don't mind if they wait till 2022. Give Justin Fields a year in the system. Let them get rid of this coaching staff and all these guys and get a real coaching staff in, and then let 2022 go.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with in Dynasty of getting a guy a year early. It sure as hell beats a guy a year late. So go get him.
Story.
I was going to say real quick, speaking of Notre Dame tight ends, Tommy Tremble, I understand he ran fast, but this dude's going to be a block first player. Great real life player and all likelihood, but he's not a fantasy guy, right?
I would agree. Because you saw that in Notre Dame. He wasn't really producing. He was their run blocker. And yes, he has a great athletic profile, but he's also a strong run blocker. So that's what they're doing with him.
It's kind of like Drew Sample all over again, isn't it?
Drew Sample. Man, dude, so the Bengals and Cowboys tight end committees. So I was thinking, Jarwin last year was everybody's, including myself, a late round tight end guy. The amount of best ball teams I sacrificed to Jarwin, Herndon, and Jay Sternberger, man, just disappointing to think about. But, looking at those situations, Jarwin, is he going to be the league guy we thought he was last year, or is Dalton Schultz played good enough to just, make that annoying committee that we don't want to touch? Same thing in Cincy. CJ Uzomah was on nobody's radar. He is getting fed targets for the first week and a half until he gets hurt. And then Drew Sample comes in, doesn't, freaking knock the socks off anybody, but plays well enough where you're I would understand if Uzomah doesn't get his full job back. So that's interesting, man. I won't even say I'm taking guys like Chris Herndon. Troutman is there that late. Guys like Anthony Ferkshire, I wouldn't even put Uzomah and Jarwin on my late round tight end radar, but maybe we should. And I think this is another example of us reaching May, talking ourselves into random tight ends. And at the end of the day, go get Kelsey or Kittle or Waller, and you'll probably be much more happy.
Totally. But every year we do it, right? Because
every year
because Logan Thomas shows up, and players like that. Every year we're taking garbage in the last few rounds of our drafts, hoping that they do something. And
if the only way I would advocate for getting these other tight ends is if you already have the other guy. So I had Dalton Schultz, picked him up as a free agent. I'm getting Jarwin just to make sure I've got the guy. But if that's what you're leaning on as your starter, you're probably in trouble anyway. You probably need to go get a better option as a tight end one, because I hate playing that game where you have to guess each week which guy, unless you're in a best ball, then it doesn't matter. But guess each week who's going to get the lion's share of the targets. I just don't want to deal with that. I'd rather spend a little extra, go get a tight end I trust, and just call it a day.
It is a good point, though, about taking both of them late round. I hear some people say, never handcuff any position because, that's just assuming your lineup isn't going to hit every pick. You're not going to hit every pick. So, yeah, I understand if you draft Ezekiel Elliott, you don't need to draft Tony Pollard. First round versus 10th round, I get that. But if you can take a 14th and, or even later, not honestly for the Cowboys, you can take a 15th and a 16th and probably have a top 15 tight end out of that pair at worst. Similar thing which I was doing with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. It's okay, it's 2 late round picks. I understand they're not both going to ball out, but there's got to be something there if you take 2 late round picks and you can, almost guarantee a high end outcome that you should consider more.
2 other guys from last year, tight end wise, and I don't know, and I'm going to ask the question: is there any hope for Harrison Bryant, and is there any hope for Alberto?
Yeah, when their freaking depth charts clear up, because Noah Fant and freaking Austin Hooper's getting way too much money. Noah Fant's a beast in his own right, and also like David Njoku is still in Cleveland. God, man, just that's why it's like I feel like give Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson a full-time tight end. Those guys are catching 10 touchdowns every single year, no matter what. Hopefully he gets
and with the tight end class that just came in this year, I mean, it's going to make it even more difficult for those guys to even be in the conversation if they did get the opportunity, because we've got, probably 2, 3, 4 tight ends in this class that are going to push for, back end tight end 1, high end tight end 1 for Pitts, obviously, in the conversation. So I would steer clear of those guys. I mean, unless your rosters are super deep or they're stashed on the taxi squad and tight end premium, I probably wouldn't be touching them. Quite honestly, though.
That's why I ask you 2 brilliant individuals.
And I will say, shameless plug for the PFF grades. Like, I know they get. So look at it this way: you're getting attacked because it's at the pinnacle. Like, that is what people look at. Everybody's looking at them, so it's going to get under scrutiny. But PFF grades, I think, are a really interesting piece to add to the conversation as you're building the profile of the player that you're looking into. I was serious. I signed up, and I have the college PFF subscription because I love that it breaks down and gives me the deeper dive into these rosters, helps me see run versus pass and some deeper diving in that. And I mean, I think it's a very important part of the puzzle. People that crap on people that do grades are just dumb. Like that, it really is a helpful piece of building the identity of the player and helping you decide if you're going to go after somebody. So if you're watching and you guys are crapping on people's hard work for grading, especially on like a PFF or something, not that PFF gives a rip, they'll do what they're going to do and keep making hand over fist, but get over yourselves. Or make something better.
People that don't have a tape, love to shit on the ones that do.
That's my thing, man. And also, hey, if you want to shit on a take, do it right away. Don't do it when the whole situation is folded. That's what, hey, I had enough of, my helicopter picks crash this last year. And I get it. We're wrong. I'll eat that shit. But if you have a real problem with it, tell me that before the game, not after when all your priors get confirmed. Right. So that's my only thing. And it's all good nature. I think honestly, outside of a few bad, it's just annoying, man. Like 100 people compliment you and one person says something mean. Unfortunately, that's the one that kind of sticks out to you. So I really do think most of the, the fantasy football community, especially, I think is awesome. It's funny when your tweets sometimes get going and then you get out of the fantasy, you get onto this like weird real life football fan, but not fantasy community. And it just gets hostile quick. But I think, generally the people we're interacting with more times are not all mean well. I'm just saying, we're all trying to predict the future. Obviously we can't be right 100 times. And we need to be held accountable to that to some extent. Let's just be, maybe a little more civil about people.
Well said. All right. So we've got one question from the community that we haven't answered before we send off for the evening. The only rookie from last year that we haven't talked about, our boy MathQuest in the chat wants to know, is Henry Ruggs going to take a step?
So Henry Ruggs, man, right there. I've been talking to my guy. All right, look, I have him ranked in like, the 40s or 50s. He was on my quote unquote, my guy list last year because I was like, hey, look at this offense. You got Darren Waller, but there's got to be someone else. It's like, we really think Nelson Aguilar is going to take over? Well, fast forward. Okay, he actually did take over, but who could have seen that coming? And with Ruggs, man, if I had seen examples of him getting force-fed the ball and not doing anything with it, maybe I would be out on him. But he literally got 5 targets in a game, only twice. He caught 3 of them, both times for 55 and 56 yards. Like, we just didn't have these games where they were trying to go to him and he wasn't doing anything with it. And I understand the idea that, you earned your targets. We've talked about this with drops throughout this podcast, So I'm not saying Ruggs, exceeded expectations, but for me, like, again, his primary competition, is gone. He didn't like completely suck last year. I mean, he flashed a little bit. He had the game-winning tutty against the Jets, pretty solid game against the Chiefs, making a couple big plays. Like we saw, it's not like his, it wasn't like a Darius Hayward Bay type season where we're like, God, this guy like sucks at football. It was just like, man, like they're really not giving him much of a chance. So, whether or not Smokey Brown and I wouldn't be shocked if Smokey Brown ends up just taking over for Nelson Aguilar, as messed up as that is. So for me, I'm not going out of my way for Ruggs. I'm not also calling it in on him because I don't think he's having enough opportunity. Do I trust John Gruden to really give him as much opportunity as he deserves? Not really. So wouldn't give up, but not looking great. For no one other than Darren Waller in this offense, honestly.
Well, and you can't even love Jacobs the way that Gruden treats him. It's like, what are you doing? You have all these studly players and you treat them like crap.
Drake's going to get more freaking looks than Booker. It's always been a 3 RB backfield. That's the hilarious part. People are like Jacobs and Drake. Jalen Richard is going to be out there on third downs, and we're all going to be pissed. But believe me,
I can't even remember who's their fullback because he's going to be out there a little bit too.
Yeah,
I can't remember what his name is.
Yeah, Alec Ingold.
I think so. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
Still got it.
I don't know about Ruggs. I don't understand the draft pick because he's a field stretcher. He's that kind of home run hitting wide receiver. And you don't have that kind of quarterback and you don't run that kind of offense. So I don't really understand. I'd love to see them put Ruggs in the slot and see what he can do in there because I think he could make some magic happen because Bryan Edwards ain't getting it done. The guy can't stay healthy for more than 15 minutes. Hunter Renfrow he's a nice story and all, but he's not doing anything special. Darren Waller commands that offense and he's going to continue, but I'm not ready to punt totally on Henry Ruggs. I think there's something there. But they've got to utilize him better. They don't scheme him up right. To Ian's point, he had 5 targets, like what, twice, did you say? It's ridiculous.
That's it.
So you took this man over any other wide receiver.
So,
what are you doing?
And in fantasy, we're getting the discount on that. It's similar to Corey Davis. Like, all right, Ruggs clearly is not living up to expectations in real life. He could still be a viable fantasy receiver, like compared to where he's being drafted at least. Come on.
Wait another year and buy Ruggs and get excited when he leaves in free agency. Because he's not going to stay if he's getting treated like this, for another 3 years. 3-4 years obviously is a rookie deal. But that would be what I would do because the skill set's there, the talent's there. We've not seen anything negative to make us think he's not a good football player. So it's like, okay, it's the team, it's not the player. And Bryan Edwards, whatever. I mean, his foot, he really needs some help. Mims is the only other receiver we didn't mention because I don't know that there's really anything to mention about him. New York's moving in the right direction. He's an interesting prospect, somebody that I think you can get a fair price, but I don't think we know exactly what this thing's going to look like yet. So I think people are kind of cautiously just sitting on him and waiting to see what happens with Mims. Any thoughts on that?
They're cheap. That's the thing, man. Like if you're on best ball, like just doing these underdog drafts and stuff, like you can pretty much get Wilson, Mims, Davis, and Elijah Moore like rounds 11 and later, like period. Like Corey Davis is the only guy you even somewhat need to worry about. So, if you're in a tournament trying to get crazy, that's fine. I just don't think the offense is going to be any good at the end of the day. And to me, it becomes kind of comes down to the offensive line. Like they might just be that bad. They'll improve to some extent, but like Darnold, so pressure rate in and of itself isn't the best statistic because, a lot of quarterbacks just hold the ball like Russell Wilson, Deshaun. They hold the ball because they can make magic happen when it doesn't. And Sam Darnold and Joe Flacco last year each had bottom 12 in terms of like fastest release times. But if some of the cool stuff they give us at PFF, we can actually say, all right, 2.5 seconds or less you're throwing. What about the pressure right there? And the Jets and the Giants were still the bottom 2 teams. So I really think Zach Wilson, who never had to, really go up against any sort of tough competition last year. I don't want to write off anyone because we've written, at least, draft community has written off Daniel Jones, Josh Allen, and, Justin Herbert even as quarterbacks. And at least in fantasy, you don't even need to be a good real life quarterback to be a great fantasy quarterback. So I'm not saying I'm out on Zach Wilson, but at least in pre-draft, man, I don't think he's someone you should really focus on, again, unless you're trying to be contrarian, Mr. Let's get these guys late and hopefully they boom.
All right.
You can make a lot of money following around after Adam Gase in fantasy football. So that's what I'm holding out hope on when it comes to the New York Jets.
Is this our Chris Herndon segment, or
could be?
He's got to stay healthy.
I wasn't very high on Mims last year. I thought he was a pretty green prospect, but at the same time, he battled some injury, had a tough rookie season. Not every rookie comes flying out of the gates and can be Justin Jefferson. He set a record for a reason. So if you have Mims, hold him. If you don't, try to buy him cheap.
Yeah,
why not?
I think Corey Davis will be a big help for him. You know, he brings the maturity. He brings a solid profile. You know, I'm just not, I'm not going to buy him for a high price. I mean, in my mind, if you own Mims, you probably want something close to what you paid for him, which is an early second. I'm not sure I'd pay an early second unless I really felt like he was going to blow up. You know, I'd probably wait and see a little bit. But if you like Mims, jump all over him. I don't have a problem with the player. I think it's still another year or so before we really see what he's going to be, because that offense now needs to gel. You need to gel with a new rookie quarterback. You've got a rookie running back. You've got new pieces that have come in. A rookie, the left side of that offensive line will be fine with Becton and Elijah Vera Tucker. But after that, you've got three other players that are going to, be a sieve in letting defensive linemen through. So it's going to be a tough 2021 for the Jets offense, but I think they're going to move in the right direction at some point. All right, people, that's it. We went a little over an hour, so I appreciate you guys hanging with us. We more so appreciate our amazing guest. Ian, it's been a pleasure and a joy to hang out with you tonight, brother. Before we go, like we always do, we like to let you have the floor. Plug whatever you're doing. Tell people where they can find you. Tell people what they need to subscribe to. And the floor is yours, my man.
Thank you guys. This was a lot of fun, talking all sorts of madness. Again, I'm always down to talk ball with basically anyone as soon as we're freaking doing it in May. I'm not, we got NBA playoffs going on, MLB season. I don't want to completely throw those sports under the bridge, but it's always football time for me. But thanks, dudes. Yeah, PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, PFF.com. Basically, what I'm doing for the next 3 months, I got 100 question series, basically every team's quarterback, backfield, passing game. And I'm writing an article on it. And I'm also doing a mini podcast. In the meantime, keeping you up to date with everything. And also hopefully continuing to bring on some NFL players that really, they're the stars of the show. And
man,
it is.
I forgot to talk about Deandre Swift and the live lion on the sidelines.
Bro, that was, man. So, it was funny with DeAndre. One of the things I've had to realize, I honestly, I just started hosting podcasts, last July when PFF hired me. And I found out that, you have 10 questions set. And, if either of us talk about 10 questions, we can stretch out to an hour, no questions asked. It's all good. You start talking to these NFL players a little bit, and, they don't want to be there. And I get that. They don't know who the hell I am. They just, they're here because their agent told them to be there. And so they're just, offering, a little bit lighter questions. So I can do a better job of getting more questions asked them. But my goodness, DeAndre Swift, even though he didn't it was a 10-minute podcast, but even though he didn't roll on the answers, man, he was crushing with it. He said he does not want a freaking lion because that's crazy. I said, well, you had a bulldog at practice. He's like, well, that's a little bit different. And I was like, yeah, good point. Very different, DeAndre. Way to go there. Named Alvin Kamara the RB1 of his all swag team. Said Adrian Peterson was his, favorite running back growing up, and says he's comfortable doing whatever out there. So got to talk to Swift, got to talk to T. Higgins, hopefully talking to many more. So yeah, dude, it's a great time. PFF Fantasy Football Podcast for all your listeners out there. And yeah, let's go, freaking win some money this year. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to siphon through this shit, figure out who's going to score fantasy points, who's going to not.
And there you go. It couldn't be said any better or any more eloquently. Everybody, thank you guys for hanging out, blowing up the chat, having a good time with us tonight. As always, we stream Monday night. I got the IDP show Monday night. We've got Tuesday night, this show every Tuesday. We're also going to be partnering up with our boys from Front Yard Fantasy to be doing some game shows here on YouTube and having some fun with that. I've seen some of our boys in the chat. Love you guys over at FYF. We've got a lot going on. We've got a lot of stuff at rotoheat.com. We've got rookiedraftguide.com for rookie profiles if you're still in rookie season. Check out what we got going on. Follow us on all the major platforms. If you need us, find us over on Discord, Facebook, Twitter, all those places. We love you guys. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.